Hello, and welcome to another Toon Network match report with me, Adam, and guest pundit, Mr. Ben Harrison.
Hello there.
We are in London on the weekend of the Chelsea defeat. We lost 3-1 at Stamford Bridge. Unfortunately, we weren't at the game.
We were not, but we're the next best thing.
What, in a pub?
In Broccoli, yeah.
Didn't quite have the same atmosphere, I'm sure. So we'll go through the game as usual. Rafa sort of disregarded the 4-4-2 once again. He went with a 4-2-3-1. He started with Gale up front. He dropped Hosselu.
Yeah, but I mean, I think the switching system clearly designed around, you know, you're going away to one of the best teams in the country. You need a bit more solidity and a pack the midfield, and I sense really the game plan was going to be to try and frustrate Chelsea. As it happens though, because of that switch with Gale up top, a bit more opportunism in the final third, and we took the lead within the first 15 minutes.
That's it. I guess with the likes of, you know, you've got runners in that sort of forward four. You've got the likes of Gale, Perez, who do press well and have high energy. You've got Murphy, who runs his socks off. Richie as well, who's energetic. And we give them something to think about. They ended up having to pass it back to Courtois, who kept, you know, we put them under a lot of pressure. And I think it was great work from between Murphy and Gale that led to the chance for the opening goal. But before that, we'd scared them a couple of times, but Gale tried to feed it through. It then sort of rebounded. It was going back to the goalkeeper, and Murphy out of nowhere just sort of darted in ahead of Courtois, who got a hand to it, came out to Gale, and a really composed finish. He's now done that twice, opening goal at both Old Trafford and now Stamford Bridge. So, you know, we've gone through the whole season playing with a target man, yet you've got Gale, who many, including myself, kind of wrote off at the start of the season because he didn't look up to pace in the Premier League. Probably just injured, I imagine, because he's shown some, you know, a bit of, you know, his being sharpness and some really good finishes.
Well, I think the key is what you've just been talking about there, though, is it was a combination of wanting to kind of pack the midfield a bit more, be a bit more solid, but have that high energy up the top of the pitch. And I think there's a common misconception that when you play one up top, well, he has to be a big guy because you're going to want him to hold the ball up, you're going to kind of play long.
I guess it depends how you're going to distribute to him.
But if you're ever going to have any joy, like away at a team like Chelsea, actually playing it long, really, more often it's going to be into the channel because you're going to want to try and hit teams on the break.
Yeah.
And so you need someone who's a bit more mobile. And ultimately, I think the other calculation would have been, well, if we get a chance, it's likely going to be out of maybe a set player, a corner, or what have you.
Yeah. Something
falling in the box, and you're going to want a player in there who's going to be able to take it.
Well, that's right, because I mean, last year in the Championship, we scored a very high number of our goals from set pieces. We did the same against Stoke. Lascelles' goal, and the week before that he won the game at Swansea from a set piece, a corner as well, against West Brom in the week.
Yeah,
both from set plays from the right hand side. One was a corner, one was a free kick on the side of the box. So I think you're absolutely right to highlight the fact that set pieces were probably, you know, one of the ways that we could have possibly scored. But now a funny one that's been kind of dividing fans has been the fact that he wanted to select Diarmi ahead of Shelvey. What are your thoughts on that? I mean, he didn't go with Hayden, who was on the bench, who was fit, who wasn't suspended, he was back in the squad. But if he wasn't going for a proper defensive midfielder, what was Diarmi doing there?
Well, I'm not a big fan of Diarmi.
Likewise.
But if you kind of put that to one side and think about the kind of play he is, he's
terrible, incompetent,
and perhaps
a big lump, poor touch.
So we can come to those qualities in a second. He's physical. You can imagine a game in which he's
got long legs, so he's leggy, so he can get nicks, he can little interceptions, I guess.
But he's also, you know, he can be energetic, he can drive with the ball. I'm saying kind of hypothetically.
Yeah, I was going to say, I think a lot
huge body
I think it's very much a Sissoko in that respect.
But if
he can be bothered.
But if you're asking the question, you know, why would you select him? Well, possibly because there's some issue around trust with Shelvey, whether Benitez can trust him to take instruction, and kind of in a game where actually that centre midfield is going to be very, very important, and you can lose the game very, very quickly. And actually, I mean, you saw when Shelvey came on, he dwelt on the ball a couple of times and lost possession. There was turnovers of the ball because Shelvey held the ball too long. If it was me, on the other hand, I think Hayden's a better shout in there if you're looking to be tighter.
I agree.
And if you're looking to be expansive on the break, then Shelvey's a better shout. So it didn't quite work. He didn't have a very good game. But I do wonder whether with Shelvey particularly there's something else going on with Rafa where he just ultimately doesn't trust him to kind of...
And that now that Marino's come back in, he can maybe afford to leave him out of the starting 11 a bit more because he feels with Marino he gets more of a complete player he's a tackler, but also he gets a lot of interceptions and tackles and blocks in Marino, more than you would probably imagine. But then he's got that, he can unlock a pass as well. I don't think he's quite got the passing range of Shelvey, but he's definitely got the vision of Shelvey, I'd say. So maybe that was his thinking. But Diame, an odd choice, but I think he'd afforded Hosselu quite a number of chances. As much as maybe we haven't been feeding him correctly or whatever, I do think for whatever reason he needed to be out the team just for a reset or a reload to hopefully give him a kick up the arse and maybe he'll... But I don't know why Gale should be out the team at the minute. I think it might depend on opposition. But anyway, I mean, we looked like we were, going kind of toe to toe with them for a while, and we were relatively solid at the back to a point. But a cross came in. Lejeune made a really excellent interception to one cross, but unfortunately that fell to an unmarked Eden Hazard. Looking at the replay, Marino had kind of been following him because he'd come central, but then he stopped running Marino, a little bit like the Moy goal against Huddersfield. But then was that a Clark? Which should it have been Clark's man as well? And was he slow to react? I think he was slow to react to the second ball.
In part though, you've got to put that whole scenario in the context of the kind of 10-minute bit of the game that we were in. And they've basically been bombarding us.
Yeah, they did.
There'd been a kind of real sort of turning up of the tempo from Chelsea. And there'd been a couple of moments before that where it looked like we were really shaky and they were going to get through. And as you say, Lejeune in that move alone had already made one pretty good clearance. And so there was just...
It's like we poked the hornet's nest and suddenly it was like we were under quite intense pressure that... we said before coming on, Hazard alone is worth more than our entire squad to put together. And that's the difference. I mean, the way he hit that shot was very fortunate in that it sort of... He hit the shot into the ground and Darlow's got his hand up and the replay just shows the ball. I mean, it's such a fortunate finish and very unlucky on Darlow, who actually... and you couldn't really attribute the 2 goals against West Brom to Darlow either, because both were defensive errors from the 6-yard box, which you couldn't really reasonably expect Darlow to do anything about. So I guess I'd like to see Darlow maybe give him more of a chance and see what he can do. But yes, as you mentioned, we went behind under a lot of intense pressure, and then shortly thereafter we had Richie, who was almost in a left back position, didn't get a call, tried to head it out. I mean, the right thing to do was probably, in hindsight and with bird's eye view, knock it back to Darlow, the header, but he hasn't. He's tried to head it out. It came to Moses, who sort of drove a really strange but very effective ball in. And Mbemba's on Morata, and we know how dangerous he is in the air. Lejeune just crumbles to the ground for whatever reason. I don't know what happened there. Yeah. But should Mbemba be showing more strength there?
Well, I think Mbemba's trying to be a bit too clever, and is waiting for a touch in the back to go down. Basically, he's
trying to win it, isn't he?
Yeah,
a free kick.
And that's ridiculous. 6 yards out with the ball coming across. I mean, you've got to be sure.
You don't make. Well, you don't. Either way, you do not take those risks in that situation.
I mean, maybe he did feel a hand in the back, but.
Wasn't it? Well, watching it again, there's not enough in it for me for it to be a free kick.
And he's a strong enough athlete to not get bullied in that situation, and he got bullied. And then all of a sudden, what's gone from a really positive opening third of the game,
which is familiar,
is awesome. But for me, we can get further into the kind of the goal itself, but we were unable during that period to stabilise the game. And I mean, it's interesting. You watched. I don't know if anybody did watch the Man City West Ham game on Sunday. Just now. And West Ham, managed to, by being pretty negative and kind of packing the final, the Man City's final third, resist essentially and make it really, really difficult and make Man City try and turn up the tempo, get very wide to try and find any space. At no point really in the game were we able to kind of hold Chelsea like that.
No, but then
we didn't even look like we set up to.
No, but then I mean, you could argue it's a question of the quality that they have and the ability to penetrate, these other defences. However,
City have got, is it?
no, but we have shown the ability to be solid at the back against maybe lesser sides, perhaps. But we've definitely shown that we can be more solid than we have done over the last 2 weeks, where we've lost 4-1, 3-0, 3-1. Whereas before that, we were losing 1-0 here, 1-0 there, and we lost 2. The only time we lost more than 1 goal was the first game of the season when we were down to 10 men.
But if you think like the Richie thing you were talking about just there, where he makes the bad decision.
But I wonder whether he needs communication there.
But even then, like I think that decision is symptomatic of like a team that's basically panicking. It's not like in control.
Okay, yeah.
There's no one's looking to take the sting out of the game. Like we're looking to kind of shift it immediately, pass it immediately. No one's looking to kind of kill it, and I think we paid the price ultimately because we just. I mean, I'm not saying it's easy. I mean, Chelsea are bloody brilliant, and our players are not. But if you've got any chance in that kind of game, you need like, particularly when you've just conceded, you have to try and like stem the flow somewhat. And if you can't, then the chances are before half time you're going to concede another.
But that's it. And I think once that second goal went in, it felt like we were kind of resigned to that's it, really. I mean, it was 2-1 at half time.
It wasn't so bad, was it? Though?
Yeah, no, I think we largely. I don't think it was. It certainly wasn't how poor the Watford game was. It felt more like the Man United game, except we probably had fewer chances against Chelsea in the end. I think that that first half an hour against Man United, we did have a couple of chances, and certainly in the second half as well. But it was all about how we were going to then come out the traps in the second half. But you just think it was always going to be an uphill. I mean, Chelsea's lineup, for example, they were playing the likes of Moses, as we mentioned. Drinkwater got a start. Drinkwater's a great player, don't get me wrong, but he's not even the best. He's by far the best centre midfielder that Chelsea possess. So you felt that they were almost playing maybe a Chelsea like. Obviously, no disrespect to the players that came in, but
it's weren't playing to rotate in it. I mean,
that's the diplomatic way of saying it. And you look at their bench, the likes of Bakayoko and Zappa Costa and Batshuayi, who's not even getting a look. These players would walk into our side.
Cahill was on there.
Cahill. So Willie Caballero, who we obviously, it's no secret, Rafa Benitez tried to sign, but we dillied and dallied, and we didn't get the job done. Chelsea snapped him up to sit on the bench all year.
Yeah.
Willie Caballero he would have been playing for us in that game. Instead, he's just sitting on their bench. And it kind of epitomises the difference between the two clubs. And 2-1 down at half time, we had a goal. Not a bad first half in the context of everything. I think most people didn't give us a prayer at Stamford Bridge yesterday, but sometimes you've just got to concede. As difficult as that is as Newcastle fans, and that we want to at least try and nick a draw or something like that, it's always going to be difficult against teams that just have that much resource, that much depth, and the fact that the quality on their bench was largely better than some of the quality we had on the first 11.
But the thing is that like the margin for error in games like against Chelsea, Man City, whatnot, is zero. So when in the game, Richie's header for the goal,
Mbemba crumbling,
Richie giving away the penalty.
There's
3 pretty basic elements in very dangerous areas that have gone wrong, and all of a sudden that's 2 goals. And to get anything out of the game, then you've got to get your 2 goals of your own. Well, I mean that's like a huge task.
True, and so we'll get onto the penalty shout. I don't think anybody's in any qualms about that penalty decision being given. Richie tackled kind of around the corner blindly. He didn't kind of look at I think it was Moses coming in, and
he knows it as soon as
he knew it. He knew it, and that again killed the game. It was I must say, Hazard ran the show yesterday for me, and that penalty was impudent. It was a beautiful little chip, and it just kind of shows the confidence of him.
But I mean, Rafa, even though he didn't say to the players, he'll have had in his head, if we can get into the last 15 minutes with just a goal between the two sides, then we've got a chance.
Yeah,
that had to be the aim, and the timing of that goal and what it meant for the game, it was just criminal, really. To kind of, particularly when it is a player like Moses, who has got a good turn of pace. He's likely to kind of get beyond you. There's no need to dive in under those circumstances.
It's strange to kind of see Richie almost in a left back position for their second and third goals. So does that tell you something about? Does that tell you something about how Rafa wanted us to double up on Hazard, or does it tell you something about does Manquillo not actually doing his job and Richie having to just come back and do it for him?
I think it tells you everything about Chelsea's system. So they play with kind of 2 wide, and that like with the kind of 3 at the back, and then 2 quite aggressive wing backs essentially. And so I think it means it forces you back, and in a sense Richie's doing his job by being there. Just not very well, and I know that's kind of cost the team.
And a good point there, and maybe that's lessons learned from the Watford game, where we got absolutely torn apart by that Ziegler guy, who was a left wing back, and there was obviously confusion between Yedlin and Richie of who exactly was supposed to be picking him up, which you talked about on the Watford match report, and we didn't learn our lesson, and it happened time and time again. So maybe Richie doubling up was the result of a week long on the training ground of Rafa Benitez learning from his mistake, and I think that's the difference with the coach that we have now, to look at those mistakes and yeah, we made individual defensive errors yesterday against a very, very good side. I think that's the crux of it, and it was going to be a tall order anyways. It was going to be a big ask, but the fact that if we can learn from mistakes that we do make against any side, going into the more winnable games, that's going to make us stronger, more knowledgeable. It's going to help Rafa Benitez pick a better side because he knows which players can perform these new instructions that you're having to learn every week from all the mistakes that have been made. And, that's something that you don't get with a Pardew, with a McLaren, with a Carver. They blindly just throw the same team out again and just hope for the best. You roll the dice. That's the difference.
I think for me the encouraging thing was, despite being on a poor run, the energy and the application, particularly in the first 15-20 minutes, didn't betray a team that had lost confidence or was coming to just get a hiding. And clearly they're still in a position where Rafa's got the dressing room, they're fired up, they're listening to instructions, and they're going out to apply a game plan. And that's not nothing, because we've been on a terrible run, and you could easily imagine that players would go into a game away at Chelsea, first game of the weekend, thinking, we're going to get an absolute battle.
Yeah, I mean, point in case, you look at Liverpool-Huddersfield. So Huddersfield, I mean, it was kind of 2-1 to Liverpool way, 3-1, and then they just absolutely capitulated, and it was 5-1 in the end, and that's going to knock their confidence massively. It's going to knock their goal difference down. Our goal difference has taken a battering in the last 3 games. Before these 3 games, I think we were on 0 goal difference, but now we're on -8, and that's the difference. Bournemouth have, with a draw today at Southampton, have just sneaked ahead of us on goal difference, but we're on 3 points. We're on the same 15 with Bournemouth above, Newcastle, and then Huddersfield just below. So that goal difference is going to be key.
It's going to matter, because I mean the bottom 6, 7, 8 in the league are so tight,
and they haven't. And given despite our poor run lately, they haven't capitalised on that. I think they're only a point better off the distance from us between the relegation zones. So that's significant as well. That if we are going to go on a bad run, and let's hope it comes, we arrest it soon. The West Brom results and the Chelsea performance to an extent will assist it. I think that we can get it. We can start pulling away. As long as if we are going to lose, then as long as teams below us are losing and around us are losing or drawing, that's going to help us. Bournemouth draw today, for example, that's important. West Ham losing at Man City today, that's really important because that keeps them in a slump. And
when they got Chelsea and Arsenal next,
well,
so you would anticipate that'll be another couple of games before. If Moyes is going to turn around, it won't be for another couple of weeks. You would imagine. The interesting one for me in all of that is whether Palace have shown up now and they've got a couple of clean sheets on the bounce away from home. I think if Hodgson can kind of get them going and they start getting some players back from injury, then you could see teams like that. If Pardew gets West Ham going once he's kind of had a couple of, because he's normally pretty good.
West Brom.
West Brom. Yeah. For the first 6 months, he's normally pretty good.
Well, I'm really good actually. Yeah, I'm really good.
Sorry, and so because I think the point you make is interesting and right, that we haven't really been sucked back in any more than we were before.
Simply because of, it's not to say we can't.
Exactly, we can't rely on that. No. Sooner or later, because.
But I think the last couple of performances. I think that the last 2 performances, West Brom and Chelsea. I've just realised I was talking about the last 3 games earlier, but it's the last 4 games that have gone down to -8. But the last 2, the West Brom second half performance and the Chelsea, I guess again the first half hour, similar to the Man United performance, there's a lot of positives. We look like a team who we can score against very good defences. We can come back like in the West Brom, so we've got character and spirit. And I just think we need to take those, despite the results. What you're saying there is kind of you feel that the character and spirit of the team remains intact, whereas other teams like West Ham, even West Brom, who did well to come back against us, are going to struggle.
I wonder about it because I do think the West Ham performance today against Man City was much better than they've been, and so I think we've got a limited amount of time to get our act together, because at least a couple of the other teams below us are like punching below their weight, and they should be higher up the league. And you've already seen, I know like Allardyce has just arrived, and Puel hasn't been in post long either. But like Leicester and Everton have pulled themselves out of it. I think they've got better sides.
Yeah.
So there is that. But I think like if we go another couple of games without getting 3 points on the board, then
it's gonna become a thing.
It gets more and more difficult. Yeah.
I mean that's 1 win in the last 10 or something.
Yeah.
What is that?
I think that's right.
Yes,
but I mean, and I think that despite, of course you want to be positive about it, and it's away to Chelsea, so there's no point kind of, going into that and imagining we're going to win 3-0.
I mean,
but there are clearly deficiencies in the squad going into January, like very large ones that we knew about in the summer.
And that's a bigger question. I mean, I think we before the game when we were talking, it was kind of like we didn't expect even a point. It was more about, we just want a good performance. Let's just have a good performance that's going to keep confidence a little bit high, not get absolutely turned over by Chelsea, at least give them a game for making work for it, which we did to an extent. Second half was a bit of a dead rubber, I think. But, talking about Leicester, we've got Leicester at home next on Saturday. That's at home, St James Park. Leicester are on a really good run. Vardy's looking tasty. He's back on form. Well, maybe not his haircut, but certainly his football looks pretty sublime. But Vardy's scored a couple of excellent goals this weekend and the last, so he's going to be midweek. He's going to be very dangerous. So that's going to be quite an interesting game. It's again, it feels like a big ask to get 3 points, but I think that at home we'd like to try and give anyone a game and try and not let what happened at Watford happen again going forward. And I think, as we've talked about in the Chelsea game, we maybe have tried to learn from a few mistakes, but there's only so much you can do with the players that you have, and this is what Rafa Benitez has been repeating recently. So Rafa wants 20 points by the end of the month. We're on 15. We need 5 more points to make that happen. There's a lot of games around Christmas, as we all know, so there's a lot of chance that there feels to be maybe a bit more of an easier run forthcoming. But as you said, Ben, we need a win. I think a win we can dine out on for a couple of weeks extra. It's that kind of thing. I think we're sort of like living and dying daily, kind of thing, scrapping for food every day to try and stay alive. I think that's where we're at.
And in fairness, we need like a couple of players in the squad to get into a run of form. Like no one is really. There isn't sort of anybody in the lineup at the minute.
You can almost say Gale to an extent with his two away goals.
But even then, he's because he's not been in the side for long enough. It's like he needs to go on a run now. Like through December, if you can get like a couple more, then you think brilliant.
That's very true.
And whereas the likes of Perez, yes, in and out. Richie, Boyle, I mean, not a good game.
Not a good game defensively, but ultimately he set up, or almost essentially was involved in the setting up of both goals against West Brom. So you kind of see Jekyll and Hyde there, but ultimately he's not really a defensive player. So how much can you vilify him for defensive errors when it really should be Manquillo should be making those?
But I guess what I mean, we both do fantasy Premier League, and you got players like Sigurdsson.
Poorly, I might add. That's fair. Very poorly.
But you got players like Sigurdsson, who even before Everton have won a couple of games. You look at him, he's got a few assists. He scored at the weekend. Yeah. Lanzini for West Ham, a goal and 3 assists in the last 5 games. They're players who are just like starting to fire.
Richarlison is another one who's been absolutely on form.
Exactly. and we need just a couple of players to just get into a bit of a good run of form.
We need FPL candidates in our team, basically.
You wouldn't have anyone from Newcastle in the FPL team. I mean, why on earth would you? I had Elliot in for a little while because we kept a couple of clean. But you wouldn't.
Yeah.
And we need a couple of players to just play above themselves for December, basically, and then we're into January. And you can start thinking about possibly getting under. I mean, it's a difficult window, and obviously there's the takeover stuff.
It just overcomplicates everything. I mean,
well, it could just ruin everything. I mean, if it doesn't get done, then it just freezes everything, and that would be really bad. Or we're doing it all in the last 2 days of the window, which isn't ideal. I mean, it's not ideal anyway. But you would not want to go to the end of the season with the squad we've got. I
mean, you live in London, so you're a lifelong Newcastle fan. How, there's a lot of fans think there's some kind of agenda, the London-based media or Southern-based media against Newcastle. How, just asking objectively, how do you kind of feel Newcastle are covered? Do you think it's fair? How they're represented? And
so you're right. There is this sort of feeling that Newcastle gets a raw deal, and I promise you, it's actually much worse. Nobody cares. Genuinely, the fact that we all have really kind of keen memories of the late 90s, early 90s when things were brilliant. Like everyone else has moved on.
I mean, you say that, but we've been picked for Sky Games about 7 or 8 times already this season.
Yeah, but I guess there must be something in the television deals that people in the Northeast have got that kind of makes it a good bet that people are going to watch the telly. But I mean, I'm kind of kidding, but I'm not really. Like, honestly, we're not really a story in this year's Premier League yet, and we haven't been. That's the truth of the matter. And the only and if we get covered negatively, then it's because we're playing badly. By and large,
which I think recently has probably been fair enough.
And particularly if you look at like the last 10 years, it's been a bad 10 years. There's been a lot more negatives than positives. It wouldn't really be realistic to imagine that coverage is going to be much better than that. But truthfully, I mean, if I have crack with folk out and about, people will more often than not wistfully go, "God, you guys used to be brilliant," than anything else. But it's in the past tense, and that's the reality, isn't it? We absolutely know we've been taken over by clubs who haven't had a shit decade and who've actually invested.
Yeah.
And we're trying to claw back. We've been doing it on a shoestring. Really.
And it's not a case of clawing back the fact that we've won relegation in one season in the Championship. We're clawing back years of squad development.
Yeah.
Years of it. So obviously, you have probably. Well, you definitely have no inside knowledge, more so than any other fan out there.
I don't know why I'm here.
He's been hosting me this weekend, so I felt obliged to let him on. The takeover, can you see it happening? It's in the balance, isn't it? They're still in talks, apparently. So as early as yesterday, they're still in talks. So despite not
to the extent to which that Staveley's character has been in and around other takeover deals, she's clearly got some substance in it to that degree, at least. So Ashley, there's no reason why you would want to hang on beyond where we're at now. It's too the weight of risk, particularly given the way the season's going, is we'll be back down before long. So
we definitely will not be worth anywhere near 300 million.
No, exactly. So I can see why it makes sense for him to cash out. You'd be bored if not else, because it's not kind of kicked on and being what. If to the extent he's even thought about it, that what he hoped it would be. So yes, I could probably see it happening. For me, the important thing is the timing of the damn thing. Like
this window is creeping up almost a bit.
Exactly.
This has almost happened about a month too late.
Yeah.
I think. So he either sells sooner and gets a lower price, or he tries to hold out longer, but he probably knows that. Just simply as a sort of as an insurance that he'll have to fork out a bit of money in January to ensure that we stay in the division, because if the takeover does collapse, he needs to know that we're going to be a Premier League club for the next potential buyer that might come in.
Or as he's saying to them, mind, you need to be clear that I'm not investing in January, so if you want to buy it and make it a going concern in the Premier League, the best bet is to buy it now.
So ultimately, is the difference in cost going to come down to, well, who pays for January?
Yeah, well, maybe it will. I mean, but either way, it's not ideal time, and it can't happen quick enough if it's going to happen. And even then, I mean, we just need like oodles of cash thrown at the squad, and the new owners need to accept that a good chunk of that's not going to work out, because it never does.
No.
You know, all clubs, even the top clubs, have made huge signings that have barely played or don't work out.
Musa Sissoko.
Quite so. And so that's going to require like 100, and you've seen it with Everton. You know, they've put huge money in.
It wasn't about the quality of the players. It was just about the actual positions of those players, and the lack of balance, I guess.
But partly that, but also just such a quick change, so much change all at one go, and losing a player like Lukaku's, or you know, Tottenham had that with Bale, very, very hard to like fashion a new side essentially, all overnight.
A new way of playing.
Exactly. Yeah. So there's going to be bumps in the road, even if we do get a new owner, and even if they do put money in. And I think that, but then it literally can't get any worse than we are now, because I do think we're a good candidate for relegation. As things stand, if nothing else changes, I will be in the bottom 5, like you know that, and it'll be really tight.
Do we need a goal scorer, basically?
We do need a goal scorer, but then we also need, I think, reinforcements all the way through the team. But goalkeeping situations unacceptable.
It is, isn't it?
And it's really important. Centre midfield, I mean, I like Hayden, but I'm not sure how many other sides he gets in.
I think he's still learning his trade. I quite like him. I like his tenacity, and I think he's already a better player than Diarmi. I think Diarmi is substandard.
Set that bar high.
No, it really is. I think Marino's excellent. I think in terms of relative to our squad, I think Lejeune's been a good sign as well. But I think you're right. I think we need. There's a question mark over Mbemba's communication, his language, which is why he's sort of been out the side underneath Rafa Benitez. Clark's had a couple of shifty weeks, and it's just having enough depth to be able to rotate.
Playing players like Clark at fullback, you know what I mean? Like, it's just, that's not good enough. We're playing Mankilo, who we know isn't, you know, Rafa knows he's not good enough. He didn't want to sign him.
But Ben, the top of the league and second of the league, both playing midfielders at left back, Fabian Delph and Ashley Young. They're not defenders either. They're not left backs either. So.
I know, but like our option.
Maybe Colback comes in.
Exactly.
Maybe he comes in. This is it. We'll be up in the third. Don't come back, Colback, please. So look, we all know where we stand. We're going to Leicester. I'm not going to be too disheartened about losing 3-1 at Chelsea and taking the lead.
Are we away at Leicester?
No, we're at home. Home this Saturday. So. Once again, we'll be singing our hearts out at home, hoping for even a draw would help some way towards momentum and spirit and give us a platform. But if we can nick a win, and if we are going to nick a win, it is going to be by 1 goal. It will be like a 1-0, but I think Vardy's going to be quite difficult to contain. So I think it might hinge on his performance. Really.
No, we're quite. But I mean, and despite being a bit pessimistic through that last bit of the conversation, like I said about the Chelsea performance, first 15-20 minutes, it didn't look like we were affected by the bad run we're on. We can start well against Leicester. If we can get ahead early, I don't think there's any reason why we can't have a good result.
I completely agree. I think what we need to do is burst out the traps like we did against Bournemouth. We didn't happen to put the ball in the net in the first half, but we pummeled them that first half. It's just that we didn't finish chances, and they just slowly grew into the game and confidence, and then Cook wins it in the last minute. You know, that was down to lack of finishing, but we'll see what happens anyway. Thanks very much for watching. I've been Adam. That's been Ben for the Toon Network. Subscribe to us on YouTube. We're also on SoundCloud and iTunes if you want to hear the audio version of this. Follow us on Twitter, and we're on Facebook as well. Thanks very much for a very special match report with this guy, and we'll see you next time. Thanks everyone. Bye. Bye.